Okay. Perak Shishi, the 6th chapter of Deios. Derech b'yoso shel odom lios nimshach b'deiosav v'masav achareyo v'chaverov.
That's the place.
The
I will make big.
approach for creation of man.
No, the
Sandy?
Maybe push that. The mirror, it will be that. The window.
The way God created the human being, that he should be drawn in perspective and in behavior after his peers and his inner circle of friends. Noig b'minog, also. He assumes the behavior pattern of the members of his province, his community. God created the human being that he should be influenced in perspective, in behavior, in all aspects of his life, to his peer group, to his intimate circle, and to the members of his community. He should be influenced. Now, interesting. It has a very positive side to it, a very negative side to it. So if a person allows himself to be exposed that the peer group has appropriate and proper perspective, morals and ethics, and the morals and ethics are actualized and manifest themselves in exemplary behavior, constructive, contributive, everything positive. Being in that environment, the way God created a human being, you'll be influenced to assume that perspective, the morals and ethics and behavior. That's the positive side of it. But on the other hand, if you find yourself in a community where the peer group does not have appropriate perspective, and the behavior is not appropriate, and the ethics and morals are corrupt, and you're exposed to them, and the members of the community don't behave properly, ultimately, regardless of what you want, you can be compromised, and ultimately you can become corrupted. This is the two sides of the coin. The human being so impressionable has nothing to do with your level of IQ. It has to do with the reality of the way God created a human being. You are an impressionable being. And whatever that environment is on many levels, that will make its impression on you as a human being. That's the way God created a person. So let's say a person finds himself in not such a good environment. His peer group is not a good peer group. His inner circle is not a good inner circle. The correct perspectives are not correct. The morals and ethics are corrupt. The community is something which has a semblance of humanity. So where does it leave you for choice? You have choice. We're not saying you don't have choice, but it makes it more difficult, much more difficult. Because there you're fighting a battle where you're being drawn in one direction, and somehow you have to counter that level of influence, not to be influenced. So what is the ultimate, what is the correct choice to do? Why push a boulder up a mountain if you could just leave it and go to a different mountain where you don't have to push the boulder up a mountain? You have only push a pebble up a mountain. A pebble up a mountain is not difficult, especially if people assisting you to push the pebble up the mountain. You have choice. Even in the environment you are, it's very difficult. As I said, it's more than a tug of war. You have to fight your own demons plus much more. Because each of us has an evil inclination. So we have an Achilles heel. But what do we do to somehow have the ability to suppress it? Be it in an environment where the perspective is right, the ethics are right, the morals are right, the inner group is positive, then it's a win-win. Of course, you have choice. But if you go in the negative environment where all that doesn't exist, then literally it's like plucking yourself out of quicksand. That's how strong the pull is in that direction, because a human being was created to be very impressionable, positive and negative. So what should you do in that situation? If you're smart, you leave the community. You leave that group of people. Understanding the liability and the exposure, what it means to be exposed to that. Or you go to an optometrist and you want to have your prescription changed. He puts you on these big glasses made of metal, it's attached to a machine, and he keeps inserting different lenses. And he has a chart up front, cover one eye, cover the other eye. And he asks you, at what level could you see? Better, worse, clear. And he keeps putting in different lenses. And that will determine how clear you see. But if he doesn't put in the right lenses, you can't make things out. You miss things. You don't even notice things. You can't even make out the big letter on top of the chart. If you're in the wrong environment, as I said, it's almost impossible to get it. To really understand what is and what's not. Because you believe it's only that. The way you process it. Could you imagine somebody being raised, God forbid, in a prison environment where every one of the cellmates and that part of the prison, the hardened criminals, where they did not invest a moment of life in anything constructive and productive. Everything was corrupt and criminal behavior. What do you think these people are going to talk about? Everything is in that vein. Automatically, as they say, either swim or sink. If you want to swim in that cesspool, you know what you can be swimming in. Otherwise, maybe sometimes it pays better to just go under and end it right there, if that's the alternative. So let's see the Rambam. Lefichach, therefore, since the human being naturally is so impressionable, that's the way God created the human being. Therefore, a person should attach himself to devoutly righteous people, and always being in the association and sit continuously with chachamim, with wise men. So you should learn from their ways. You should attach yourself to tzaddikim. Just because a person is learning doesn't mean he's a tzaddik. That tzaddikim, and in addition, to sit with chachamim continuously, tamid. Kedei, for what reason? Sheyilmad masayim, to learn from their ways. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable. The Yisrachik min ha-rishoyim, and distance yourself from the evil. Ha-holchim b'choshech, who walk in the dark. Kedei shelo yilmad masayim. Why should you distance yourself from the rishoyim, from the evil? Because you don't want to learn from their ways. Knowing that you're such an impressionable person, every human being is so impressionable, we want to stay as far away as we can. We should not be impressed by that. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, when I studied in yeshiva, so I studied, there's a tractate that discusses the laws of ritual slaughter and how to examine the internal organs of an animal after it's slaughtered, and how to devein an animal. It needs deveining. There's certain sinews that have to be taken out. There's certain parts of the animal that even a kosher species is not kosher. How to do all that. So the person so I went with a group of my friends when we were studying, because we wanted to see it in real time. And they said, when you walk into this slaughterhouse, make sure to bring old clothing, because the moment that stench of a slaughterhouse is absorbed in your clothing, you'll never be able to get out that smell. Even if you wash your clothing, it's going to be so deeply embedded in the fiber, even if you wash it with detergent. Suze, could you hold one moment? Hello.
Got to be flexible.
Shlomo Omer, Holech es chachomim yechkam. If you walk with the wise, you become wise. The roek silim. And if you shepherd hedonists, fools, as I always say, a fool's a fool is not a person who has a limited IQ. A fool is a person who should know better, and he goes in the wrong direction. But if you shepherd, you're associated with fools, you're going to become compromised. You know, it's interesting. It says in Pirkei Avos, Harchek mishochin roch, keep your distance from a bad neighbor, and don't attach yourself to the evil. I mean, here the Rambam writes, you should be mischaber, you should attach yourself to tzaddikim, the term attach, and you should sit with Talmidei Chachomim, with Torah sages, to learn from their ways, their behavior. Then he says, and distance yourself from the evil. He doesn't say you shouldn't attach yourself. You should distance yourself. Not to learn from the ways. In Pirkei Avos, it doesn't say you did. It says, al tischaber. Don't attach yourself to the Russia. It seems to be, but if you're not attached, even though you're not far, it's okay. The Rambam says no. You should keep your distance far. Keep away from the Russia. Because if you're too close, you're going to learn from his ways. Because the person is so impressionable. You know, there's an expression in English, and of course, Bob knows this. You sleep with dogs, get up with fleas. That's it. You're associated with evil, it's inevitable you're going to learn from their values, their ways, and their perspective. And you're going to see it the way they see it. You're going to grind that same axe that they grind. You know, Avram Avinu was really something, the word out of the ordinary is an understatement. He lives in a pagan world, all idolaters. If you go against idolatry, paganism, they put you to death. Everything is perverted, corrupted in the world. And Avram comes out like a fighter, and he takes on the world single-handedly. I mean, it's unheard of. But what about your influence? A human being is so influential. You're so impressionable. So impressionable. Why wasn't he so impressionable? He was born his parents were pagan people. Pagans. His father informed on him when he broke the idols to be put to death. His environment wanted to devour him. But yet, he survived it. He rose above the fray, and he was able to not only not be affected, he affected everyone else. It was literally miraculous, Avram. That's one in a generation, one in many generations, who's able to do that. Ome quotes another verse from Mishlei, from Proverbs. This posuk is from Tehillim. Ashri Ish, fortunate is the man who goes in the right direction, sows himself with the right people. Person lives in a municipality that their customs are bad customs. Whenever you get together, you burn incense and you smoke pot. That's the way they get together. And you eat LSD candies. And you think you're on SpaceX going to I don't know which planet. That's the behavior. And people don't walk in that straight route, in the appropriate route. Everything's corrupt. You should leave that location and go to a place where the people are righteous, and they conduct themselves in a path of goodness, a good path. It's interesting. When he speaks about the evil, he says, they don't walk derech yishara, the straight path. He says, you should leave and go to a location where the people are tzaddikim, they're devoutly righteous, and they conduct themselves b'derech tova, derech tovim. They conduct themselves in the way of good people. He doesn't say b'derech yeshara. I think you're leaving the community because presently you shouldn't be there. So you choose a community that's tzaddikim, devoutly righteous, but you're not a tzaddik yet. You want to be influenced, you want to be impressed with them. Now, could a person who's not a tzaddik appreciate what a tzaddik is? How do you appreciate it? You can only appreciate it if you see his behavior. He's truly a good person. He may be walking a straight line. Nobody walks as straight as these people, but you can't appreciate why they're special. They may be walking that straight line and they may be the equivalent of angels. But you realize, since you don't have the capacity to process what an angel is, you're not impressed by that. But if you see they go b'derech tovim, you know what goodness is. They're giving the values are good values. So it's not only that tzaddikim. Tzaddikim very often is between man and God. The devout, the people, they won't hurt a person's feelings. But to see the goodness is something which is more overt. Because you're coming from a location, you have to be exposed to something that is going to attract you. It's more than leaving the negative. You want to be impacted by the positive. So you have to be in a position to appreciate that positive. You don't have a capacity to appreciate it unless you see it in real time. You see that goodness. You appreciate the goodness of their behavior, of their values. It's interesting. We speak about Avraham Avinu. Abraham was the pillar of kindness, loving kindness. There was no dialogue or debate that he ever lost when it came to theology, monotheism. But you understand, through what is a person touched? You're touched through one's kindness. Avraham is Einstein plus when it comes to theology. But you understand, but I'm a pagan. I'm walking as a pagan. And we get into a dialogue. Master Avraham, I understand what you're saying. But I'm not really at your level. No, you're in the celestial level. I still walk, my feet are still on the ground. I don't even relate to what you are. What about he gives you a level of hospitality, a level of selfless. He negates himself to a degree that he treats you like you're his master. You say, I've never seen such goodness. I've never seen such givingness. I've never seen such purity. So even the ordinary pagan who walks off the road, the wayfarer, he's immediately touched by that. The moment you're touched, that's derech tovim. You see the goodness of that person. When you touch with that, then you understand what this man represents is what you want to be. His perspectives, his beliefs. And if he, who's one of a kind when it comes to goodness, to kindness, nobody could hold up a candle to him, evidently his theology is the correct theology. Because by the others, I've never seen it. We had a story many years ago when we were on 63rd Street. Certain person used to drive Hatzolah ambulance. He was a Wall Street person, but in his free time, he was a Hatzolah volunteer. And one day he comes to me, and he says to me, he says, Hatzolah, even if a non-Jew calls the Hatzolah, they go. If a non-Jew has the Hatzolah telephone number, an emergency, they will tend to the needs of the non-Jew. It's not only for Jews. So he had a call to a non-Jewish home, and the non-Jewish home, he comes, a priest is administering last rites to a woman who's dying, a Gentile woman. And he says to me, I saw something amazing. And this person himself was raised conservative, And I knew him very well, that he always introduced any remark with a smile, as if he wanted to say something positive, and then he came up with the left hook. Right into the jaw, into the solar plexus. That's what he would always do, always. So I know if he's talking, I know I'm waiting for the punchline. You got it? The punchline. I'm waiting for it. So he says, it was unbelievable. This priest was administering last rites. The house, the woman lived in squalor. You had to cover your mouth and nose to be able to breathe. That's how dirty it was. And this priest goes in, and he goes and he administers last rites to this woman. I've never seen such kindness and such concern. You never hear that about a rabbi doing such a thing. Yeah, that was the punchline. That level of selfless givingness, you would never find it by a rabbi. So I said, well, let me ask you a question. If this woman would not be a Christian, that he would minister last rites, or a person who he could convert to Christianity, would he be there in the squalor? He wouldn't be in the squalor. It's all because she's a Christian woman, and he's going to save her soul, and that's who he is. He'll go through thick and thin for what he believes in. That's number one. Secondly, if he really was so concerned for this woman, why does he only arrive when she's dying? He should have been there months before, cleaning up her house, and that she should live like a normal human being in a clean environment. Why did she have to live in such? Why now, when she's dying, also now he shows up? Because now is the important moment. Now I'm going to save her soul. What about her living as a normal human being? Where is he? This is what I said to him. I said, you want to know something? You don't even understand what chesed is among the observant. They will never allow this to happen. If they become aware that a Jew is living in this level of hygiene or deprivation, they're going to make a difference. They'll do whatever they can to make that person's life better. I said, that's the chesed of a Jew. So don't tell me what the priest did and what the rabbi doesn't do. You go to the hospitals and you see what Bika Cholim is. The way they go and accommodate Jews in the hospital. Food, every service, whatever they can to help. They don't leave a stone unturned. So what are you impressed? It's the kindness, the givingness. You're not here before you put the shovel in the earth to cover the grave. You're there way before. Avram Avinu, what did he demonstrate? What did he display? His humanism beyond humanism, as a giving person doing acts of loving kindness. So that's what he says. Go to a community, which is a community of devoutly righteous. V'nogim b'derech tovim, and they conduct themselves, not they walk a straight path. The way of the good people. Good people. Good people do good things. They do for others, even they have nothing to gain, for the sake of goodness. When a person's touched, where I understand that I am the priority, because they do things for goodness, because they're good people, you want to be associated with that kind of person. Then you become impressed with those people. You know, a person, years ago, they used to advertise buses to Atlantic City, you don't pay, free transportation, and they give you $50 in coins to use in slot machines. And they may even give you a lunch on the way and a free drink. So everybody's running to Atlantic City. This kind of opportunity, how could you turn it down? But the people don't realize they're drawing them in. It's a hook. Free transportation to the casino. $50. If you don't go near the slot machine, you don't get the taste of and the excitement of the slot machine. All of a sudden, he starts taking out his own credit card and he puts it into the slot machine. And when he walks out, the amount of money he lost, he regretted he ever got onto that bus. There's always a draw. As they say, there are no free rides in this life. So why are they giving it? There's a reason. The reason is they're the reason. They're going to be the beneficiaries. That's usually the way it is. As they used to say, buyer beware. Not simple. But tzaddikim, it's unusual because the average person is a taker, not a giver. And the average person has his own axe to grind. Everybody has an axe to grind. A tzaddik has no axe to grind. He's doing it for the sake of the right reason. Therefore, when you go to a community, that's where you should go. You know, it says in Chazal, in the Midrash, Tov l'tzaddik, Tov l'shcheno. It's good for the tzaddik, it's good for his neighbor. Oy l'rosha, woe to the evil, woe to his neighbor. If you're a neighbor of a tzaddik, you're a lucky person. It's good for you. You're the neighbor of a Rasha, oy. Oy means woe. Woe to that person. Again, why? We're talking about this. This is the Rambam. A human being was created to be very he's very impressionable. And therefore you have to pick you, not only pick your friends, you have to pick your neighbors. Who you're going to allow yourself to be exposed to. So here we're talking about adults. What about you have a child? Who do you allow your child to be associated with? Your child is not intelligent enough, doesn't have enough experience in life to be aware of where he shouldn't be. You have to look out for your child when you raise him. The environment has to be an appropriate environment. If not, your child's going to be compromised. If an adult is so impressionable, can you imagine what a child is? Even more so, you have to create an environment, an insulated environment to protect that child. Should not be influenced by other things. You have to know who his friends are. Where's he going? If not, you don't know the cost factor of that. Lack of supervision. That's exactly what we're talking about over here.